Value. It's a term that gets thrown around an awful lot in the world, especially in magic as it relates to magic books. What is it? How do we define it? Who gets to define it? We're going to cover all of that and more in this video. If we haven't already met, my name is Jeff Kowalk, and you are watching Erudite Magic. The subject of this video is to identify what creates value for you, the magic consumer. Stay tuned to the end of the video. I'm going to drop a nugget of what I think are some of the most value-laden books that I have in my collection, so check it out towards the end of the video. Before we get too far into this, let me stress, I am not a magic publisher. So I actually have zero idea of what it takes to publish a book. But as an erudite consumer of magic books, just like you, I have a few opinions I want to share with you here. I also want to hear from you about what you value when it comes to magic books. The world of books, especially magic books, has changed a lot over the years. Back in the day, a lot of books were published as hardbound, approximately this size book. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Back in the good old days, these books were very text dense, made on some sort of word processor or typewriter before being set to print. Very few pictures, a few hand drawings or illustrations occasionally, but mostly text. The binding and covers were typically rugged, but nothing extraordinary or special. Fast forward to today, where so many books are published now with more elegant designs like a slipcover, color-rich text and photos in the books, or meticulously hand-painted illustrations in an acid-free paper book. So what does it all mean? Let's get into what defines value. I almost chose to be an economics major, so I will try not to bore you with any of those subtle details, but let's just say that value is different for every consumer. So, what is this value? Before we get to what value is, I think you need to understand two other concepts. One is cost. We all get this one. A book costs whatever in your currency, and whatever the book is being sold for by a willing seller, that is the cost. Easy enough, right? What's harder to define is worth. Worth is what you, as an individual consumer, will derive from the book. And this is where things get a little bit dicey when you're trying to define value. To me, value is the difference between worth of the book and the cost of the book. For everyone, the cost will vary slightly, but will probably be within a normal distribution. Worth, on the other hand, will vary greatly based on what you hope to or what you do get out of the book. Remember, the gap between those two, worth and cost, is the value to you. And I want to show you how you can increase the value that you get from a book. So in a magic book, there are two things that I believe define that worth to you. One is the content of the book, and two is the production values. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of production values. If you take your standard Tarbell, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it is a standard hardback, a lot of text, not a lot of drawings, just enough to get you there. The print is fairly small, the margins are decent, but nothing to write home about. You should have no trouble understanding how to perform something once you've read it in Tarbell, but the experience may not be as exciting as other production values of other books. On the other hand, you have books like Distilled that are full color, and the pictures are almost breathtaking in their depth of color. But how do you define which book is worth more, Distilled or Tarbell? Frankly, it's almost impossible to say. But let's have a discussion for a moment here about production values. I want to hear from you. Do you think that production values matter when you are buying a magic book? For me personally, I care, but it's not the most important thing for me. I think that production values can show that care and love and concern for the consumer was placed into the book. Whenever you buy a book that you know has poor production values, I'm looking at you, 3510, it usually is reflected in the contents as well as those production values. You'll have unfinished sentences, fragments, descriptions that don't make sense, misspellings, and it shows that there wasn't any care and attention placed into it. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you can have books that have gorgeous production values, but don't have a whole lot to show for it. It's all fluff and no substance. Sometimes when a book doesn't have a lot of production values, one gets the feeling that it's a money grab by the author, that if they're willing to just throw something out there, and a lot of times things that fall into this category I would suggest are PDFs or pamphlets or sometimes lecture notes. And I'm not saying that those aren't good things. There's definitely value to be found in those, probably more from the contents than the production values, but sometimes a lack of production values can indicate an overall lack of quality and worth to you as the consumer. Sound off below, what books do you own that have the best production values and therefore a higher worth because of that, and some of the worst production values that you either find have worth or don't have worth? I'd love to hear examples from you. But once you get beyond the shell or the exterior, we were all taught as children, don't judge a book by its cover. You get to the content. And this is where I think I can help you get more value from your book purchases by applying a few simple rules before you buy a book. This should come as a surprise to no one, but the first thing that I think you should do when you're considering buying a book is do some research. That is, I want you to figure out what's in the book that you're interested in learning. What do you think is going to help you with your goals? If you're a performer, what do you see in this book, or what have you read in the ad copy that you think will be able to go into your act? Or what will you learn that will further a routine that you're already utilizing? I'm going to give you some advice here that I think you already know if you know me well, and that is that you should write it down. That's right. Whatever it is that you think you're going to get from this book, be honest with yourself and put it on paper. Rewatch the video, the advertisement, reread the ad copy, and then be honest with yourself as you put pen to paper and say, what do I want to get out of this book if I buy it? Writing it down has proven to clarify the thinking process as well as set realistic expectations on what you hope to obtain. Sometimes you'll finish writing it down and you'll say, that doesn't actually look like I really need that. In which case, you've saved yourself some cost. If, however, you've written something down and you think this is what you want, you get the book, you can decide, did it actually meet what I wanted or did it not? And this will help to train your intuition, your gut, and your purchasing ability to know, are you getting what you wanted to out of a book purchase? The clearer you are on what you want out of this and more specific you are, the better your results will be. Once you've written down what you expect to get out of the book, now is the fun part to go and do some research. Yes, even buying a new book should be driving you back to your library to say, what do I already have and own that maybe I have explored or maybe I haven't, that has something incredibly similar to what I hope to get from the new book. At this stage, I recommend going to Dennis Baer's Conjuring Archive to find versions of whatever it is that you're trying to learn or acquire, and see if you have versions that you already know and perform or that might work just as well. And then go back to your notebook and write down the benefits and limitations of each of those and whether you think that the new version will help to alleviate some of the pitfalls or increase some of the benefits versus the versions that you already own. I know sometimes at this point, information about a new book is going to be a little bit scarce, but let me give you a couple of pointers here to help with this next step after you've written some of this down and done some research. Go further with your research and watch some reviews of names you trust. Hopefully you guys trust me enough that if I've reviewed the book, you can get some good information there. I try to, but of course, if there are other things that you want to hear about in reviews, drop me an email or a comment on one of my videos and I'll do my best to answer you as truthfully and honestly as I can. Check out some of the other YouTube channels on here. There's Magic Orthodoxy, Unbiased Magic Reviews, Real Magic Reviews. There are no shortage of options to look for information about a specific books, Don't be afraid to hit up some threads, but just be aware of who you allow to have a voice in your life. Some people don't have any experience, but they talk really loudly, and so you're always going to think they know what they're talking about and they're out to help you, when in fact, their ignorance might just be passed from one person to the next. So be careful who you listen to. A third strategy, and one that I recommend, is that you wait. Patience is a virtue, and time is your friend. Although so many books tend to go out of print, usually if you're willing to wait just a few months after a book is released, then you'll get more information, better information. Typically, there will be a sale or the price will drop, or you'll be able to find someone who's willing to part with their newly acquired book for a little bit less than it cost them. Speaking of sales, one way to increase your value is by decreasing that cost by shopping over at Don's Magic and Books. Don is offering you guys, my viewers, 10% off this week via the code VALUE in order to increase the value to you as a Magic consumer. That code is good for anything on the website. That includes new and used books, props, DVDs, and tricks, so be sure to check out what Don's offering. Oh, and he offers free shipping in the continental United States on anything $20 or more. If Don doesn't have what you want in stock on his website, drop him an email. He may be able to tell you if or when he's going to get it in. There's a link down in the description below to Don's website, so please click that link and start saving 10% off with your code VALUE. Once you've written your expectations, what you hope to get from the book, you've done some research, you've potentially waited to find a better deal. If you do decide to purchase the book, now comes the part where you can increase your value, and that's an entirely separate video that I've already done for you about how to study magic books. I'm going to put a link up here so that you can watch it. It's one of my most popular videos, and I think it's because it really is helpful to get the most from your study of magic books. So if you haven't already seen it, check it out, and then if you want to see a part 2 on how to go further with the study of magic books, let me hear from you down in the comments below about the types of topics that you would like for me to address so that you can continue to extract value from your magic purchases. So here's the part that you've been waiting for. I promised you at the beginning of the video that I would talk about a few books that I think have extremely high values. Remember though, this is going to be very individual to me. Definitely check out the link below for Don's Magic and Books to see if any of these books are currently available in his inventory. And don't forget to save 10% off with code VALUE. So one of the older titles that I think has a tremendous amount of value is the Stars of Magic series book, put out now by Mayor Yedid, and I believe is currently in an offering of a paperback version. You're going to get all the old classics. I've talked about it in my old video review, but it has so many timeless pieces of magic like Triumph, Spellbound, Coins Through the Table. There's an impromptu cups and balls routine. It's not that expensive, and I think it is an incredible value for the price to get lessons from these old masters. There are several Dover paperbacks you can get very inexpensively from either Amazon or your favorite magic dealer, whether that's a brick and mortar or online magic store, that provide a lot of value for the cost. The Royal Road to Card Magic comes to mind as one of those, as well as some of the other Carl Full's books. Of course, what library thinking of value could be complete without a copy of Animan's Practical Mental Effects? I've talked about this at length in some of my other videos, but if you're looking to get into mentalism, I don't think there is a better value than this. And of course, if you download the Jinx for free, which I have talked about in another video, then the value is very high since the cost is $0. Dear Mr. Fantasy by John Bannon is out of print as a hardback, but he still has copies of the softback, I think, shipped for $35. So if you're into card magic, I have found this to be of an incredible value in my own personal journey as a card magician, and I think that you'll find a lot of value in it too. Probably the top value book in my library right now is David Riegel's Approaching Magic. There's just so much incredible stuff in this book, from parlor, close-up, coins, cards, mentalism. The list goes on and on and on. But David put so much in this book, and the cost is extremely low for what you're getting. So there's an incredible amount of value in this book. I believe you can get copies of this as a paperback fairly inexpensively. Lots of fun with you talking about value in magic books. Let me hear from you. What are your favorite values in magic books, and how do you define it? What makes a book worth it to you? As always, my friends, thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time and allowing me to be part of your magic life this week. See you next Sunday, and until then, keep reading.